Okay, this is the 17th of May, 2024. And this is part of my knock and talk routine. I stumbled on knock and talk the other day while I was doing YouTube, and it's a technique now used. And this is, I'll start the video, but this man right here is Wayne Blair. Wayne Blair was part of the management team when this first opened up. In the earlier publications, some of the earliest publications that were put out in 2004, 2005, 2006, Wayne Blair was part of that executive group. That was Charlie Waters, Ed Kelly, some other people, but Wayne Blair was part of it. Since then, he is not part of the executive group. He took a lower position as a slave chaser for the architectural committee. I've had a number of run-ins with this gentleman over Tract A. First of all, when I got my first letters for my doors, and I'm sure he wrote them up, they said to the architectural committee, I'm sure the order was given out I challenged a neighbor who had parked their car in front of my house for 3 weeks straight. There was a curfew, and I challenged the neighbor. I said, get your car out from in front of my house. You haven't moved it in 3 weeks. That prompted somebody in the executive to send me a letter that my screen doors that I had put on without permission on the house, they had been on for 3 years. Nobody had said a word about them until I told this neighbor to get your car out in front of my house. And that started a deal where, through communication back and forth with the one of the original managers, Pat Pence Young, she sent me letters for the doors I had put on my house, the screen doors. They had been on the house for 3 years. So I, through communication, Pat Pence Young, I questioned her about Tract A not being available to golf carts and pedestrians and why it's closed. Well, anyway, this gentleman was part of the architectural committee that produced the letters for the doors. And when she told me about, she tried to tell me it's not an access easement, it's a drain. And when she said it's a drain, the lights went off. It was like the 4th of July. I finally realized what they did. Okay? Well, I was at odds with this gentleman, this Wayne Blair, for years. They walked out of a meeting. I went into a meeting. When they wrote up the doors, I put an application in for the doors. They said, you never applied, so I applied for them, and I challenged them about the drain. When she told me it was a drain, I started getting pictures and documents and all kinds of things from Maricopa County, and I had them with me on a computer with pictures when I went into the architectural meeting of the day they were supposed to approve the doors. And they wouldn't even talk to me. Pat Pence Young with Wayne Blair and Chuck Milosevic, I don't even think they had, David Stump hadn't come along by then. These Chuck Milosevic and Wayne Blair were the slave chasers on the plantation out here. The southern plantation with all the rules. And they took it real personal if you did something without asking permission. This guy was a knight. He considered himself a knight. And he took a demoted role as a slave chaser instead of being part of the executive group. If you want to be part of our organization, we'll let you get in your truck with Chuck every day, every week, and write people up. And heaven forbid you didn't ask him for permission. If you put something on and he saw it, he was immediately insulted. I have authority over you. You can't do anything on your yard unless I give you permission. You didn't say, may I? You insulted me. I don't like it. Well, him and Chuck were writing up so many homes and causing so much dissension. And the manager, our manager now, the one we finally ended up with for the last 10 or 12 years, Caroline Clinton, they were making so many write-ups for her. I was in the last meeting before I got kicked out of the HOA. I sit in there and I listened to Chuck and Wayne try to scare the board for each of them 15 minutes each, talking about you can't allow these people to start doing things on their own. You have to have a code here. We are writing up people and you're not writing them up. And they were talking about me. They had been writing up my property for 3 months. And because the HOA knows that my house was built wrong and the grading is wrong and tract day is wrong, the HOA kind of left me alone. Well, anyway, I got a letter decertification from Woody Scouten, the town engineer at the time, about 12, 13 years ago. He wrote a letter decertifying tract A. And the reason that happened is during that meeting to have my door approved, where I had all these pictures and manuals, quotes, and things like that about my property and about tract A, how tract A was an access easement, it wasn't used, it was out of compliance. They all three got up and walked out on me. Pat Pence Young says, don't bother turning on your computer, don't bother getting your pictures out, don't bother your maps. We're not looking at them. And the first order of business to get me out of there was they signed off on both houses to screen doors. And then they got up and walked out on me. So I went and I got Greg Hustis to get, and he requested Woody Scouten to come out and look at tract A. As soon as Woody Scouten saw tract A in the condition it was to cover his ass, he wrote it up and told the HOA to dig it out and restore it. Well, that angered this gentleman and Chuck Milosevic. And I'll tell you a story that happened at the mailbox. Well, first of all, I found one of his letters. It was a bank statement between the mailbox and his house one day. I walked to get the mailbox. I looked down, there was a letter assigned to Wayne Blair, addressed to him. It was a bank statement. I checked my mail. I went down to his house. Even though we had had an adversarial relationship, he's on one side of the HOA line, I'm on the other. I want tract A restored. He doesn't. He's going along with the locals. Well, even though we had an adversarial relationship and I didn't like him, I brought the letter to him. And he's still working against me. And his thanks to me for bringing this letter that he dropped on the way back is to keep the pressure on me. Now, this is another knock and talk situation. He's the guy, he's Mr. Drucker in Green Acres. He's got all these hats he wears. He does taxes. He's been a slave chaser here. Him and Chuck Milosevic were the original two slave chasers. Here on the antebellum, racist, Ku Klux Klan, West Valley MAGA, whatever you want to call it, MAGA Trump, MAGA on steroids, election deniers, they're all the same. This is white South in Arizona, Buckeye. Now, during this interchange, my friend Jean, who had lived here in this house approximately 14 years out of the last 19, she was here probably on and off a couple of times, at least 14 years. And we don't mingle. We don't have anything to do with our neighbors. We both are from California. I have nothing to do with my neighbors. I can't get anybody to help me open up track day. They're all swilling the Kool-Aid. They're goose-stepping. This is like Jonestown. All right, track day is like, we're not going to open it up. We stole it fair and square. It deserves to be segregated. Track day is before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay, we segregated it. We did some social engineering back 19 years ago. We took the tract out of service. We made it a scenic easement or a view easement. We gave the two people on each side exclusive right to it. It's tax-free. Well, that's one mailbox incident. I brought it to him. I buried the hatchet that day between us. I returned the bank letter that I thought was important to him, and life moved on. But this guy never appreciated it. Now, why I talk about knock and talk, like I said, he's Mr. Drucker. He wears a lot of hats. And the day that he showed up at this door, Jean had moved back in. She moved away for about 1.5 years or 2 years, and then she moved back in for about 1.5 years or 2 years. I registered her. I sent a return receipt letter to the HOA that she's registered as the resident here. I did everything legally like I'm supposed to do. I notified the HOA that she's living here, and when the census forms came out, we filled them out and we sent them in. Months before this man showed up at the door. But he's showing up at the door as a knock and talk. And he didn't think I was home. If I hadn't have been home, because Jean is such a good citizen, as soon as he flashed her that badge of being the census, she would have told him anything he wanted to know. Now, he probably wasn't wearing a camera or audio, but he was expecting that she was going to answer the door by herself. I happened to be visiting at the time. And I didn't recognize him at first. This was during COVID. So he shows up with a mask and a hat on, and I didn't recognize him at first until he started talking. I said, "You stand right here, I'll be back." I ran over to my house, I got a video camera, and that's where this started. Okay? It was a knock and talk. He was going to get her to trust him, and then it would be 20 questions. Who, what, where, when, and she, because of a citizen that she is, all right, she would have answered every one of them innocently. And here this guy's on a fishing trip. This is knock and talk. Yeah, you got authority now. You've been writing me up. You've been writing up stuff for me for years. You've been the authority. You've been the...
Okay. Let me just give you this. This is an information sheet that tells you that our census takers...
Just set it down there. Set it down there. I'll pick it up later.
Everything is confidential.
Right? And now who are you?
I am Wayne Blair, and I am with the Census Bureau, and I am here.
And you're part of the HOA government, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
You used to be.
Has nothing to do with HOA. This is
You
all...
used to be on the architectural committee of the HOA,
Okay.
right?
Can I complete?
Will you just answer the question? You
Yes.
were on the HOA committee.
A committee.
That's right. You were on the architectural committee, and what was your job on the architectural
You know, I
committee?
don't have time for this.
Then get off my property. Just leave.
Can you-
Okay, are you done? Are you done with your business with me? If you don't answer me, you were the architectural committeeman who kept writing up my house for everything. You live about 5 houses down from here. You're in the neighborhood. All right, you're one of the board members. You're a silent board member here. All right, leave my property. You've left your information. I've already filled it out online. Please leave. Stay off my property from now on. I don't care what official you have. You stay off my property. All right?
Bye.
No, you've been picking on me for 15 years. It's been 15 years. Well, you're having your parties over there every weekend and you're going to your party.
Census.
Yeah, you're part of the bureaucracy here, dude. If you're not on the HOA, you're doing somebody's taxes. You've challenged me before. You're always challenging me. This is in response to this morning. You walked by my house and talked to me and I ignored you. So now you're using your bureaucratic bullshit to come and pick on me some more. I have a right to do this. I can choose. Are you doing everybody on the street?
The ones that they tell me to.
Why are they telling? Why is there a list? You should be going to every door.
No. They tell me which ones to go to.
Well, I don't see why my name's on the list when I've already filled it out.
I have no.
Then there's something wrong with your system. All right? I think that list is made up of people who are troubled to the HOA. No, you're trying to find out who's living here, who's living in my house. All right? You want to know who's living in my house, don't you?
They do. I don't.
Yeah, they do. They do. You're using this excuse of being a bureaucrat for the Census Bureau. I've already filled out the census. I've gotten the mail and I filled it out. So why don't you take your little list that the HOA made up and keep walking? All right? I know what you did. I know what you did and I know what your motives are. You're not fooling anybody. Okay. Now, we'll put it in the middle here, straighten it out. But this gentleman, after I brought his envelope back, I buried the hatchet. Even though I don't agree with you, I don't like you, it was a golden rule. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. I would want him to return a letter if he found it on the street. And I did that to him. Okay? Now, one day I met him at the mailbox, and it had been about a year since they had decertified track day, since they had ordered the HOA to dig out track day to restore it to the original. It had been about a year had gone by, and I met him at the mailbox one day, and I more or less said to him, when are you going to start turning the shovel over here? You're part of the HOA government. You're one of the architectural committee men that go around and write everything up. The track day is wrote up. When are you going to start working on it and digging it out? Can you tell me? And he got so upset. He's taller than I am. I was looking up at him face to face. He was like, his nose was a 1/4 inch from my nose, talking down to me, more or less trying to intimidate me with his authority and his size right in my face at the mailbox. He was so upset that I had a letter written against track day. This track that him, Pat Pence Young, and Chuck Milosevic have been telling me for 2 years that it wasn't an access easement, it wasn't this, it wasn't that, and now I've got a letter saying to dig it out, and I'm asking you, when are you going to start digging? He got so upset, he couldn't believe it, that I figured it out. Now, Gene, my friend, If she would have answered the door alone, it would have been 20 questions. She wouldn't have questioned him a bit. She wouldn't have recognized him. She wouldn't have known who he was. She wouldn't have challenged him like I did. This guy and me have been in a boxing match for 19 years. And really, I don't think he's evil enough and smart enough to be in the executive committee. That's why they booted him to a lower position, something that was more suited to him. Would you like to be one of our slave chasers? Would you like to have the authority to write up anything that you consider out of compliance? Yeah, like a goon, like a guerrilla. Yeah, I'd love that. I got somebody just before that, Chuck Milosevic. What a team. What a team. Going through the neighborhood like a couple extortionists, writing up everything they see. And the reason they're writing it up is you've insulted us. You didn't ask our authority. The only authority and the only reason that Chuck Milosevic and Wayne Blair had those jobs for the first 7 or 8 years is they knew where all the bodies were buried. Chuck was here when they built it. He knows where all the bodies are buried. Wayne Blair too. These are slave chasers in the Old South. Sundance Active Adult is a socially engineered community for Midwestern white people who don't want to be replaced. The people who live here year-round are considered plantation slaves that can't afford to go back to their colonial thrones back in the Midwest. This whole HOA is geared to serve the snowbird. The golf course is maintained and kept up for the snowbirds, in anticipation of the snowbirds. The snowbirds run the plantation from 1,500 miles away or 1,000 miles away, from Wisconsin, Nebraska, Minnesota, Calgary, Alberta. All these people are running the HOA. The HOA listens to them first before listening to the people who live here year-round. And we have to put up with these snowbirds when they come here. We're here living in 117 degree heat. We broke a record last year for the number of days in a row over 110. I think we went 30 days in a row last summer over 110. Okay? Only to have snowbirds that I know the snowbirds are back in Wisconsin enjoying summer weather. I'm out here sweating it out. And if I want to use that access easement to go to the clubhouse, I got to go the long way. They took it out of service. They redlined it. This is separate but equal. This is our easement as far as they're concerned. And if you want to get on the golf course in the summer in 117 degree heat, you can go the long way. This doesn't help our sleep pattern in the summer when we're back there trying to sleep, thinking that 117 degree heat, you might be using that access easement that goes by our patio. We have to keep it closed all year because if we don't, when we get there, we'll see traffic. But this is along my theme of knock and talk. He would have pumped Jean for so much information because she would be trying to cooperate with the badge he showed her. That ID card he showed her, and he might even in his bag there have a recording. He might even have audio equipment in that bag next to him, so he's recording everything she says. All right, what's the purpose of the bag? You got a mic in there? Are you wired? Like I said, this is knock and talk in Buckeye, Arizona, in the Sundance Active Adult HOA. And this guy right here, this Wayne Blair, he's one of their, like I said, he's Mr. Drucker. He wears all kinds of hats, but he works for the HOA. He's part of their fabric. He's part of the management team. Thank you for listening. Beware. Beware.